We have tons of bookstores which will sell Bibles, and you can get copies of these documents easily. You can even get them online. Apps on our phones allow us direct access to them. And I think sometimes because it's so easy to access His Word, that sometimes we take it for granted. That sometimes we fail to see the beauty and the power that it has. And I want you to think back for just a few thousand years ago, when these New Testament documents were being written. And our brothers and sisters were willing to sacrifice their lives, the lives of their children, and the lives of their family in order to preserve these documents. In order to ensure that these documents did not fall into the hands of the Roman government, where they would be destroyed. They were willing to give up their lives for it. And I want you to consider, what does your relationship with the Word look like? Do you feel that way? Would you be willing to trade your life and the lives of the people that you care about the most in order to preserve those documents, in order to preserve those words? You see, in the first century, they were. They valued those documents. They valued the truth that was in those scriptures. They valued them more than they valued life. They reasoned within themselves, I would rather die than live life without this word. I would rather die than live without my Father's voice on a daily basis. That was the conviction that they had. And I think we need to have an honest heart-to-heart moment between us and God and ask ourselves if we view the Word the same way. Or do we take it for granted? Is the Bible just a book that we break out on Sunday mornings? How precious is it to us? Because see, once we recognize that He's the Creator, that we're the creature, we don't make the rules. We're not in charge of anything. We can't control anything. Once we recognize that we're willing to take all that we have in our lives, our time, our resources, our families, everything, and submit them to God's will and not ours, then we will value His Word. We will understand that He does not have to communicate with us. He does not have to talk to us. He has done enough for the human family that we have not earned one utterance from His mouth, not one syllable. And so we need to be the kind of people that understand He does not have to give us His word. He does not have to reveal His heart to us. He does not have to lead us and guide us. And if we understand that, I believe we will come to a greater appreciation for His word. We'll come to a greater appreciation for who He is. And then if you continue in Isaiah 66, we begin to see the opposite of humility, and that is pride. And as you see in the rest of 66, He begins to show what happens when pride takes root. It becomes impossible for people to tell the difference between the holy and the profane. And sadly, this happens to us when we spend all of our time immersed in a world of darkness, constantly bombarded with darkness view of everything and darkness expectations of everything, and we're limiting our exposure to the truth. It's easy for us to lose the ability to distinguish between the holy and the profane. We can't tell the difference anymore. And it also, by extension, becomes difficult for us to tell the difference between the God that we serve, the God that we want to serve, and the gods that everyone around us is serving. So if you take that concept, bring that back into Matthew chapter 5 and what Jesus is talking about concerning making oaths or making promises. And what Jesus says is, don't be arrogant enough to believe that if you make a promise to someone, you had the ability to carry that out. Well, I can't promise you that I'll be able to do something tomorrow. Even something simple like eating, which I love to do. And Lord willing, I will do that. But even on my own, I could never promise you that I will accomplish that. Because I don't control anything. I don't control my body. I don't control it breathing air. And if God chose to, if my time is up, my life could be over before tomorrow. And so that's the point that Jesus is saying, is put on some humility. Don't be making flippant promises. You see, people couldn't understand when they read that passage of Scripture in Deuteronomy that God was trying to show them that they couldn't be like Him. See, when God makes a promise, He makes a promise not like we do, unsure of what the future holds. When God makes a promise, He knows everything that's going to happen. He knows exactly when it's going to happen. That's why when He promises something, we can rest assured it will occur. In Genesis 3:15, God made a promise that the seed of woman would crush the head of Satan. And 4,000 years later, that promise was fulfilled. To the very detail, everything God promises happens because He has the ability to see the future. And we don't. And that was the point that God was bringing out to the Israelites in Deuteronomy. He wanted them to recognize the difference between Him and all the other gods out there. When He makes a promise, He fulfills it. When He makes a promise, He is not dependent on man or anything man has to keep that promise, which was incredibly different from all the other pagan gods that they were serving. And this is the point that Jesus is making. This is what He wants them to see. So here's the encouragement that I have for you this week. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Be humble. Recognize you don't make the rules. You don't have control over anything. You don't have control over your own bodies. You don't have control over anybody else. You have no control over anything that's going to happen to you or around you. None of us have any of that control, but we know the one who does. So be humble. Submit your will to Him. And if you're not in that place, if you're still looking for Him to control you with that bit and bridle, if you're still looking for fear and guilt to motivate and control you, maybe it's time you start developing your relationship with the Lord. Maybe it's time that you start learning to trust Him, where He can take those things out of your mouth, so to speak, and just lead you, knowing that you will follow wherever He goes. Maybe that's the kind of people, maybe that's the steps that we need to start taking, because that's what He's looking for. He's looking for those submissive people. He's looking for people who will value His word, who will tremble at His voice, who will tremble when they get to hold those scriptures and know that He is speaking to their hearts. He's looking for those kind of people, and He promises us that if we will be those kind of people, if we will be humble, if we will be submissive, if we will value His word, that He will shine His favor upon us. He will show us His heart. He will show us His plans. He will show us the world through His eyes, and more importantly, He will show us how loved and valuable we are to Him. The lesson's yours.